The rain had been relentless that evening, hammering against the sprawling windows of Greyson Manor. Inside, the grand halls gleamed under crystal chandeliers, the flicker of candlelight dancing on polished floors. Yet, despite the luxury that surrounded him, Alexander Greyson, one of the youngest billionaires in the country, felt a gnawing unease. He had always prided himself on control over his company, his schedule, even his personal life. But tonight, that control felt like a fragile illusion. Something in the air told him that the world he had built with money and influence wasn't as secure as he believed. It began with a sound, a muffled crash echoing from the East Wing, the private quarters of his daughter, Lily. Alexander's heart skipped a beat. Lily, his only child, was extraordinary in every way. She was bright, fiercely independent, and gentle, but she carried a fragility that only those closest to her could see. Born with a rare condition that made her susceptible to infections, she required constant care, and Alexander spared no expense. Yet he had never expected danger to reach her, not within the walls of his own home. He sprinted down the corridor, the heavy silk rug muffling his footsteps. As he approached the source of the sound, he stopped dead in his tracks. There, in Lily's room, was Maria, the maid who had worked in the manor for nearly a decade. She crouched protectively over Lily, shielding her small, fragile body with her own. A man, tall, rugged, and desperate, had somehow broken into the room. Maria's hand was raised in a silent, defiant plea, her eyes locked on the intruder. Alexander's mind raced. Security had been tight. How had anyone managed to bypass it? And why? The intruder froze, startled by the sudden presence of the millionaire. Maria's protective stance didn't waver. She whispered something Alexander couldn't hear over the pounding of his heart, but the conviction in her eyes was unmistakable. She would not let Lily be harmed. "Alexander!" Maria exclaimed, her voice a mixture of fear and determination. "Don't come closer. Her words were cut off as the intruder lunged toward her. Time seemed to slow. Alexander acted instinctively, tackling the man to the ground. In the chaos, Maria pressed Lily into his arms. Her strength and courage left him momentarily speechless. Once the intruder was restrained, police on the way, Alexander turned to Maria. Why did you?" he began, but the words faltered. He had always known Maria as a dedicated employee, reliable and trustworthy, but he had never imagined this depth of selflessness. Maria stood up, her uniform soaked from the rain that had seeped in through the broken window. She avoided his gaze. "I couldn't let him hurt her," she said simply. "I promised her mother I would always protect Lily." Alexander froze. Her mother? Maria's hands trembled slightly as she reached into her pocket and pulled out a worn photograph. It was of a young woman holding a tiny baby, Lily. The resemblance was undeniable. "I'm her aunt," Maria confessed softly. "I was supposed to look after her if anything ever happened to her mother. She entrusted me with her." Alexander's mind reeled. All these years, Maria had been more than just a maid. She had been Lily's secret guardian, a silent protector in every sense. Every late night she spent by Lily's bedside, every meal she prepared with painstaking care, every scolding when Lily tested boundaries. It had all been done out of love, not duty. He felt a surge of emotions, gratitude, awe, and a pang of guilt. How had he never seen this before? He had thought his wealth and influence were enough to protect his daughter, but here was Maria, risking everything, unarmed, standing between Lily and harm. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Alexander asked, his voice breaking slightly. Maria shook her head. "I didn't want your money or your thanks. I wanted her safe. That's all that mattered." Lily stirred in Alexander's arms, her sleepy eyes blinking up at him. "Maria?" she whispered. Maria smiled, brushing a wet strand of hair from Lily's forehead. "I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe." Alexander looked at them both, his chest tight. He realized that he had been blind, thinking that protection was only about security cameras, locks, and bodyguards. True protection, he now understood, came from the heart, from someone willing to put themselves at risk for another. The police arrived minutes later, and the intruder was taken away. He was a desperate man, Alexander learned, trying to settle a personal vendetta he had mistaken for a financial grievance. The thought that Lily's life had been in danger made Alexander's hands shake, but his eyes kept finding Maria, standing quietly, unwavering. After the chaos had subsided, Alexander sat in the study, trying to process the events of the night. Maria had returned to her duties, but he knew he couldn't treat this as if nothing had happened. He needed to understand her, to acknowledge her courage. The next day, he found her in the kitchen, preparing breakfast with meticulous care. He approached cautiously. "Maria," he said. She looked up, wary but calm. "I owe you a debt I can never repay," he began, his words deliberate. "Last night, you saved her life. I don't even know how to begin thanking you." Maria shook her head. "You don't owe me anything. I did what anyone who loved her would do." Alexander leaned against the counter, studying her. "You loved her like a mother would?" Maria hesitated, then nodded. "I promised her mother I would, and I have." For the first time in years, Alexander felt something he hadn't in a long while: humility. Here was a woman, unnoticed and underestimated by many, who had demonstrated a depth of character he had spent his life chasing but never truly found in the corridors of power. Over the following weeks, Alexander watched Maria interact with Lily. The bond between them was undeniable. It wasn't just care, it was instinct, a connection born from love and commitment, stronger than any contract or paycheck. Lily's laughter filled the manor in a way it hadn't before, a melody that seemed to echo the joy and security Maria provided. Alexander realized something profound. The true treasures of life weren't in stocks, bonds, or properties. They were in the people who gave selflessly, who protected the innocent without expectation, who loved quietly, fiercely, and completely. He began to see Maria differently, no longer as an employee, but as a partner in the life of his daughter. He invited her to sit at family dinners, to be included in decisions regarding Lily's care, and to share stories of her own past. Stories Maria had kept hidden for fear they might be dismissed or undervalued. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light through the windows, Alexander watched Lily and Maria play in the garden. He realized that the true foundation of his home wasn't wealth, but love. Love demonstrated in small acts of courage, in kindness without expectation, in protection given freely. Alexander approached Maria, his tone soft but resolute. "You've shown me a world I never knew existed," he said. "One where love and courage mean more than anything money can buy. Thank you." Maria looked at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "I didn't do it for thanks," she said quietly. "I did it because I promised." Alexander nodded, understanding fully. Some promises were stronger than contracts, stronger than fear, stronger than life itself, and Maria had kept hers. Days turned into weeks, and life at Greyson Manor settled into a new rhythm. Lily thrived, her laughter and curiosity flourishing under the care of both Alexander and Maria. Alexander, once consumed by ambition and control, now found himself drawn to the quiet, profound strength he had always overlooked. Maria continued to serve, but her role had transformed. She was no longer just a maid, she was a guardian, a mentor, and an indispensable part of their lives. And though she never asked for recognition, Alexander knew that without her, the world he had built would have been incomplete, fragile, and hollow. The incident with the intruder faded into memory, but its impact lingered. Alexander learned to value courage over status, love over wealth, and humanity over power. And in the quiet moments, when he watched Maria cradle Lily or whisper to her in soothing tones, he understood a truth that no amount of money could teach. Sometimes the greatest heroes live unnoticed, acting not for fame or fortune, but for the simple, profound act of protecting what they love most. Alexander often reflected on that night, realizing it had changed him in ways he hadn't anticipated. He had seen fear, bravery, and loyalty in its purest form. And he had learned that the heart could protect in ways that no security system ever could. In the warmth of that realization, he smiled, knowing that life's most valuable truths were often hidden in the quiet, unseen acts of selfless love. And in those acts, he found a new definition of family, of trust, and of the extraordinary power of a human heart willing to sacrifice everything for another.